Drug and Alcohol Abuse in the Elderly by Daniel Reilly and Michael Harvey. Some causes of drug abuse in the elderly are depression, boredom, children moving away, a move or big change, loss of a spouse or a loved one, isolation, or stress. And now we have a video for you.
The startling new face of drug abuse. It's booming among people over 50 right here in the Miami Valley. Elise Coulter found out why, and she now joins us live. Elise?
Jack, at this moment, 3 out of 10 older people are taking at least 5 prescription drugs multiple times a day. Now, I asked our expert why this is happening. Tonight, I'm told they just don't know any better.
I never realized that there was a relation between the two.
Greg Newell was shocked when he heard just how many older Americans are abusing prescription drugs, but recognizes why it could be happening.
My parents and a lot of older folks have a whole medicine cabinet full of drugs, so I guess that makes sense that they would become addicted.
They think that it's harmless because it's being prescribed by a physician.
But it's not harmless. In fact, nationally, in the last 10 years, we've seen nearly a 100% increase of elderly people going to the ER because of prescription drug abuse.
They're not always aware of what the signs may be for abuse and addiction at that age.
If you've got that many drugs sitting around your house, then there's opportunity to abuse.
But they're not just abusing prescription drugs. According to a recent study, illegal drug abuse has more than doubled for people 50 to 54 and more than tripled for Americans 55 to 59.
You think of young people more than you do than the elderly.
No matter prescription or illegal drugs, it's up to you to make sure your parents or grandparents are safe.
You would have to be in contact with their doctor on a somewhat regular basis.
In the same study on elderly drug abuse, it showed drug abuse among teens has dropped 20% in the last 10 years. Reporting live in the studio, Elise Coulter, Fox 45 News.
Americans 65 or older make up only 13% of the U.S. population, yet they consume approximately 33% of all prescription drugs. Elderly individuals are at high risk for addiction to opioids or pain meds, and anti-anxiety and sleep meds. The painkiller drugs categorized as opioids use common brand names such as Vicodin, oxycodone, and Percocet. The anti-anxiety drugs categorized as
benzodiazepine
use common brand names such as Xanax, and Ativan, and Valium. And here is an elderly woman under the influence. There is a rapidly growing concern for opioid abuse in the elderly. A study found that approximately 20% of individuals 65 and older take opioids 3 or more times a week. Elderly are also more at risk for overdosing because their bodies generally filter the drugs than those who are younger. The rate of addiction in those with chronic pain is about 18% or higher in the elderly. Oxycodone, hydrocodone, and methadone are involved with up to 40% of opiate abuse-related elderly deaths. Most elders receive these pain meds from a good friend or relative. Substance Abuse and Mental Health Administration released data that indicates 2.8 million seniors abused prescription drugs last year. The elderly spend over $500 million on medication each year, which means prescriptions can be quite easily accessed. Here's a list identifying prescription drug abuse. As the baby boomer generation ages, statisticians have been seeing an increase in illicit drug use among older adults. The baby booming generation was exposed to more drugs than their parents' generation and have used more over time. Approximately 4.3 million adults aged 50 or older, or 4.7% of adults in that age range, had used an illicit drug in the past year. This will potentially put an intense strain on the entire public health system, both financially and physically. This possibly may cause some type of healthcare system reform in the future if it continues to rise. The prescription drug abuse in the elderly is decently well researched. However, the illegal drug use is not. Elderly are starting to use illegal drugs such as marijuana, cocaine, and heroin more frequently. The federal government's national survey showed that over 500,000 people aged 55 and older used illegal drugs in the past month. Here is a graph that is depicting the difference in drug uses between males and females.
So Danny, what should I take away from this?
Well, we can take away from this that the higher illegal drug use is to be expected from the baby boomer generation as they age from 50 to 65 years old. This may potentially open new addiction treatment centers and very elderly care procedures in the future. Prescription abuse is not uncommon and on the rise already in the elderly ages 60 plus.
Wow, Danny, that was really informative.
Thank you.
We'll give you a breather and I'll talk about alcohol abuse in elderly. Alcoholism is defined as an addiction to the consumption of alcohol, liquor, or the mental illness and compulsive behavior resulting from alcohol dependency. 10% of this country's population abuses alcohol, but surveys revealed that as many as 17% of the over 65 adults have a substance abuse problem. It is also predicted that by 2020, the number of older adults with substance abuse problems is expected to double. Aging can lower the body's tolerance for alcohol. Older adults generally experience the effects of alcohol more quickly than when they were younger. This puts adults at higher risk for falls, car crashes, and other unintentional injuries that may result from drinking. Also, the percent of the body weight composed of water decreases, and alcohol, which is water soluble, affects them more quickly and to a greater degree. Alcohol takes longer to metabolize in older people, accumulating in their bodies and leading to intoxication if consumption is not controlled. To look at the difference between men and women, older men have more substance abuse problems than do older women, but women are more likely than men to start drinking heavily later in life. There are two types of alcoholics: Harley survivors and late onset. Harley survivors are those who have been abusing alcohol for many years and have reached 65. The late onset group is those who begin abusing alcohol later in life. Heavy drinking can increase current problems. Those problems can include diabetes, high blood pressure, congestive heart failure, liver problems, osteoporosis, memory problems, and mood disorder. The Center for Substance Abuse Treatment published a list of signals that may indicate an alcohol or medication-related problem in the elderly. What people should look out for is memory trouble after having a drink or taking a medication, loss of coordination, changes in sleeping habits, or unexplained bruises. Some more things to look for include changes in eating habits, wanting to stay alone much of the time, failing to bathe or clean themselves, having trouble concentrating, difficulty staying in touch with family or friends, irritability, sadness, or depression, as depression goes along with heavy drinking much of the time, unexplained chronic pain, lack of interest in usual activities, and being unsure of yourself. You can tell when it becomes a problem if they hide or lie about drinking. If you have more than 7 drinks a week or more than 3 drinks in one day, or you get hurt or harm others while drinking. A family's attention is key. A family's attention to the elderly family member's daily life can be extremely helpful in identifying medical and social problems. Studies indicate that elderly people with alcohol problems are at least as likely as younger people to benefit from alcoholism treatment. The outcomes are more favorable among people with shorter histories of drinking problems. There are many ways someone can receive treatment. You can ask your doctor about medicine that will work for you. You can talk to a trained counselor who knows about alcohol problems in older people. Finding a support group for the elderly with alcohol problems. A 12-step program, such as Alcoholics Anonymous, that offers support to people who want to stop drinking. Family and friends. Detoxification. Activities. And psychological or talking treatments. And now we have another video to show you on alcohol abuse.
On alcohol abuse among older adults.
Our Ed Murray has been busy, even though he's on vacation today. He sat down recently with Spanish coach Sherman Huff for today's retirement.
Sherman, this is a problem we usually associate with younger adults. Yeah. Well, the fact is, when you look at statistics, Ed, the heaviest drinkers, I'm not talking about alcoholics, but the heaviest drinkers, the ones who use alcohol regularly, are still the younger adults. So the 24 to 44 age group, 24 to 44 years old age group of both men and women are still the heaviest users, and then the 18 to 24 are the next heaviest users. But even when you get into the 65 plus, 56% of the men and 31% of the women still report that they use alcohol on a regular basis and in pretty substantial amounts. So it's still, even though we look at it as a young person's problem, it's a substantial problem for the older adult.
Well, what about taking it to the next level from alcohol use to alcohol abuse and alcoholism?
Yeah, and when you look at that, the interesting thing is, I showed one chart showed that there is less use of alcohol among the older adults, but when you go back and you look at the heaviest users within an age group, the 65 plus, the percentage of them that are using alcohol heavily is higher than it is for the younger adults. And they think that some of these numbers of there being less users as you get older may be skewed because of several reasons. One may be that they've used it so heavily that they've died before they got to age 65. People over 65, a lot of people are beginning to take a lot of different medications, so it may become very unsafe for them or something like that, or it may just become very uncomfortable for them to use alcohol. They think that the fact that some of these people went through prohibition, they may have a little bit of something against that also. So a number of reasons of why, but it is just a real problem. And in fact, now we're beginning to see the drug problem creep into this. I was just reading a new study recently that from 1992 to 2008, the number of people 50 and over admitted to treatment centers for drug use has more than doubled, but alcohol use is still the highest thing that they're being admitted for.
We'll continue to look at this.
Thank you for watching our presentation. We hope you learned a lot about alcohol and drug abuse in the elderly.